We tend to focus too much on achievements, results, metrics, and sometimes in that process, we don't go into details of behaviors. So they always say that it's very lonely at the top as far as leaders are concerned. Decisions with pressure can often result in wrong things happening. When we talk about leadership, you can write a whole book. I've tried to distill what makes a true leader in just three phrases.
Performance is often measured by outcomes. The numbers delivered, targets met, and growth sustained. However, behind every metric lies a quieter truth: the pressure that leaders carry, the masks they wear, and the reality that they rarely speak about. Welcome to WeAce Spotlight Series. Today, we are delighted to be in conversation with Bhaskar Pramanik. Bhaskar comes with over 4 decades of experience in building and scaling global technology businesses in India. Over the years of his career, he has held many leadership positions across Oracle, Microsoft, and amongst others. Welcome, Bhaskar. We'd like to hear a little about you, about your journey in India.
No, thank you for having me on the show. So I think I've had a pretty remarkable career because when I graduated from IIT Kanpur in 1972, the computer hadn't been invented, the microprocessor hadn't been invented. And thereafter, over the decades, I've seen how we went from, unit record machines to mini computers to workstations to servers to the cloud. And now we're in the age of AI. And every new generation of technology actually brings so many benefits. It creates new industries. So I've enjoyed myself as part of this journey, both here in India as well in Singapore and in the US. And I'd love to share my stories with a larger audience.
Thank you, Bhaskar. Through this conversation, we explore performance, the pressure, the pretense, and the reality. What it takes to truly perform at the top, what it costs along the way, and what sustains leaders along over time. So, Bhaskar, we'd love to ask you and understand what aspects of performance do you believe are overlooked and critical for long term success?
This is a good question because normally when we, either as leaders or as managers, look at others and try to assess their performance, we tend to bore ourselves or focus too much on achievements, results, metrics. And sometimes in that process, we don't go into details of behaviors. We don't go into the details of how somebody did a particular job or what he achieved. We therefore tend to just look at it as a mechanical performance management system. And I'd like to give you an example of that. So let's say that you got two fathers. One father, his son comes, both of them, the son comes and says, "Dad, I've done very well in football. We just won the match. And I played very well." One father will congratulate his son and say, "Wow, wow, let's have a celebration." The second father will congratulate his son, but he will tell him the reason why you were successful was because you practiced hard, because you cooperated with your team, because you listened to your coach and your instructor. That's what I mean by that underlying success. What people did to achieve the success is what needs to be rewarded, not just the fact that you won a match. Because you can win a match one day and you can lose the match the next day. But
Right.
what you've done to yourself to be able to improve your game on a continuous basis is really what is the true, what I would call true performance.
At senior leadership levels, pressure is constant, but rarely acknowledged. How did you learn to distinguish between pressure that strengthens performance and pressure that diminishes performance?
See, if you let pressure determine your actions, you would sometimes miss out on doing the right things. And therefore, yes, there is always a pressure to take a decision. There's so much of ambiguity around. And then you have to actually think, take a step backwards. And at that point of time, not just listen to your experiences, your inner conscience, but also to check with people around you. And that's when you can then take a decision without pressure. Because it is important to do that, because decisions with pressure can often result in wrong things happening. And therefore, you have to be cool and you have to be calm whenever you're under stress for taking a decision in very much ambiguity. Not all situations are like that. I think the day-to-day management of a large organization normally takes care of itself. But there are those certain moments when something happens which makes you have to reflect and think back and then look at what more do you need to do. It's also important that if you take decisions on the basis of a particular incident which you have never faced before, yes, there would be pressure. But by and large these days, most decisions you have to take, you sort of reflected that what would happen if something went wrong. And you already figured out how to go about it. Plus your experience would tell you that, this happens in this particular situation, this is how I responded to it, and this is how then I should. So I think undue pressure can make for bad decisions, but pressure can also help you to cut through ambiguity and then take a decision, because decision at the right time is critical and important.
Leaders are often expected to appear confident and in control at all times. Have you ever been through moments where you felt that performing leadership was more important, than actually living it? What did the experience teach you?
So they always say that it's very lonely at the top as far as leaders are concerned. And I felt that many times in my career. There are times when you think everything is going wrong, then what do you do? And therefore, the only thing which you have which can help you at that point of time is your value system, which helps you to determine what are the choices which you should make or can make. And then you fall back on that. It's a challenge to not feel the stress, but if it is something which is not completely unknown, then I think you will take the opportunity to do right decision.
Do you think can an organization truly sustain high performance if its leaders don't feel safe in expressing their uncertainty or vulnerability?
Yeah. So I would rephrase that question. I think organizations need to be strong enough to be able to make a mistake and then move forward. And people should not do things because they're forced to do that. They should do it because it's actually something which is important. In my career, I found that I'll give you two examples. One is Microsoft in the era of Steve Ballmer. And Steve used to say that, look, we'll hire the best guys, we'll get them from all the Ivy Leagues colleagues, we'll train them up and we'll put them into the workforce. And if they don't work out, then we'll fire them and we'll hire a new set of people. But my style was that was not correct. I believe in what is called the growth mindset, where individuals have to be given the opportunity to make mistakes. You have to, help them to learn and to become better at what they do. And if you do that, then you will find that you've got an organization which is a learning organization, which is always finding and looking for answers. Not an organization which says, look, I know it all. Mm-hmm. It's the know-it-all organization which have challenges when the reality changes. They have a very tough time trying to readjust.
So it's more about nurturing the talent and growing the organization along
It's the
with
culture. Frankly, at the end of it, it's the culture of an organization. And, just to give you an example, what do leaders do, CEOs of companies? They're basically trying to ensure the continued success and growth of their organization. That's really what their role is. But they do it by two ways. The two ways they do it is what I call the softer side, which is I would call the glue which binds an organization together by defining the purpose, by defining the value systems, by defining the direction which you want to go. And that's the softer side. That's what I call the glue which holds an organization together. And then the second way they do it is by execution. And execution, which means it's very measured. You know the goals, you know the objective, you know the strategy, you know what resources you have with you for you. You have your mental map in terms of when you will achieve what. That's what I would call the grease of an organization. The grease is what propels a company forward, while the glue is what holds it together. And the role of the CEO is one is to provide the glue, but at the same time, it's also to help with the grease so that people are executing at the same time.
So you mentioned that organizations tend to reward certainty, even though leadership decisions are made in a lot of ambiguous situations. Do you believe expectations of always having answers creates a false narrative around the leadership today?
Yes, I think the days when, and I still see it today, you talk to any CEO, and especially in a press conference, and you ask a question, they all have glib replies. When they're off the record, then they actually wonder, did I say it right? Was it really correct? So no CEO is infallible, and therefore, if things change, like you said, if there's so much of ambiguity, you have to make a choice, and that doesn't mean that you wait for all the information to come to ensure that you have a certainty of the outcome, but you go forward with whatever information you have. So, it's very rare that you will have the opportunity to be able to figure out all the way. You want to go from A to B, but you have multiple choices of going from A to B. You have to choose one. And that's what makes a great CEO. He chooses the one which will actually make him successful.
And how difficult is it for some senior leader to come forward and say that he probably made the wrong choice and went along with something that should not have been the case?
It's happened many times. I think even CEOs will admit that they've sometimes taken decisions which were not optimal, and it could have been for a multiplicity of different reasons. But rather than kick yourself in the back, I think you should figure out that what is the options to correct it. In fact, if you've taken the right decision, you always have a plan B.
So, short term performances are relatively easy to deliver, right? You can deliver short term targets. But how do you have a continuous, sustained performance over decades? So, looking back, what do you think, was truly enabling in terms of long term performance?
So you're right. When I first joined the corporate sector, especially multinational, American multinationals, I had a friend of mine who gave me a piece of advice. He told me, Bhaskar, never hold the same position in a multinational for more than 3 years. I said, why? Because he says your sins will catch up with you. Most of my career, I've held positions which were between 6 to 7 to 10 years. And then I moved on to a new role or a new company. And I never really believed that my role was short term. Once this is one of the things which I think a lot of people have liked about me is the fact that I'm very passionate in what I do. I love what I do. It doesn't matter whether it's a hobby like photography or playing bridge or just, working for Microsoft. It's that passion. And that passion is something which carries you through. I've also realized that you can get bored doing the same job for more than a couple of years. So one of the things I have is that if in the third year a set of problems come, and I would do it the same way as I would have when I joined Microsoft, I know something is wrong because that means nothing has changed.
Right.
Therefore, I have to look at that problem from a different perspective. So therefore, every 3 years, you need to re-energize yourself, re-look at the same set of problems and figure out how would you handle the difference. And bringing about change is what I encourage everybody in my organization from top to bottom.
So, what is the one deeply ingrained leadership myth that usually is there about performance that leaders today need to unlearn?
Around performance, I think I tried to answer that in the opening question is that when you look at somebody from a performance perspective, don't just go by activities and milestones and accomplishments. Try and see the underlying behaviors which made him successful and whether that is something which he can then continue to use to be continuously successful. It's the behaviors which make the difference. It's how a person behaves. So that is very critical and very important. And that's what the dialogue should be with the CEO. that why did you do this? How did you come about doing it? What are the factors which were involved? How would you take this as a lesson and share it with your reportees? That, to me, that is the critical thing. Don't keep focusing on the outcome and the metric. Think about, see all the behaviors which led to that, and then try and see if you can make the unconscious conscious, and then you will have a far better CEO.
How do you think that coaching and mentoring or reflective conversations can shape leadership effectiveness in critical moments?
I think both coaching and mentoring is like taking a mirror to yourself. You get to see a completely different perspective, which in most cases you may not have imagined. And an example of that I can give you is that I was in Sun Microsystem, and we were beating our numbers consistently 8 to 10 years in succession, but the growth was starting to stagnate from 20%, 25. I was not getting the 35% growth which I wanted to do. So I felt that we should have a much bigger services offering and organization. And I remember at that time there was a senior VP based out of Spain. He was also the country manager of Spain. And he became my mentor. And for 12 months, I had the opportunity to chat with him on various different subjects. And he said, look, if that's your supposition, why don't you go test it out? I said, yeah, it's all there. Every single IT company, they've got a large services enablement team. So he says, no, don't think about it from your own industry. Go and look at another industry in an adjacent area with a similar characteristics, and then find out, do they also need services or not? And then you will be able to understand whether this is the right strategy or choice for you. So this was, very interesting. That don't compare yourself with your normal competitors. Compare yourself with somebody who is not even in the same business as you, and it'll suddenly open up a whole bunch of areas which you hadn't considered before.
Huh. So, Bhaskar, I'd love to hear a little about, the whole world is going on about AI right now. And AI is increasingly influencing decision making. So, what are your thoughts around the same? Would it impact leadership, judgment, and accountability?
Actually, I think AI heightened your judgment because, you know, prior to AI, we were, most cases, we didn't have all the data, the information. There was a lot of ambiguity. I think with AI, if you can prompt it the right way, as a CEO, you can get much more additional information which will enable you to take the right decisions. Because it's so quick, you most probably will be able to get that through a very prompt or a series of prompts. And that will help you to make your decisions much stronger based on facts. And more important, it will enable you to do it much faster. So I've already started using it. Not that I'm taking decisions of, the SEO decisions today, but, everything I do, whether it is buying shares or stocks or, whether I want to understand what present I should buy from my wife or, where our next travel is. That's the kind of decisions I now take. I look at that. But I'm also on the boards of different companies. And sometimes we do have to take serious decisions about acquisitions, whether it's the right time, is this the right company, and, what should the valuation be. And I found that while we do engage lawyers, we have to, it's a process. You have to get lawyers of all types. You've got to get valuers, you've got consultants. And typically it's a large number of people for any kind of acquisition. But I found that with a few simple prompts, I actually got the same answer as I would have with all of these people put together. So I thought that was a breakthrough. That, the more you use AI, the more it knows about you, the more it will enable it to actually fetch the kind of information which it thinks that you're doing. So I'm actually enjoying it. And I think every CEO needs to be adept at using AI to enhance his decision and the quality of his work.
So it's basically a complementary tool that we should accept and use rather than something to be afraid of.
Absolutely. I think, time will come when practically every individual will have his own AI assistant. And the challenge is we've got to ensure that the AI assistants don't start talking to each other and taking their own decisions. So just have to worry about that. But yeah, it's a huge assist in productivity.
So, one last question from you, Bhaskar. The next generation of leaders is expected to deliver speed, scale, and resilience, while also demonstrating greater empathy and humanity. So, how should emerging leaders balance these expectations to be able to balance both sides and then take the business forward from there?
Yeah, I don't think that the emerging leaders need to be any different from the earlier leaders. I mean, if you look at the earlier leaders, whether they're politicians, sports people, or even CEOs, they all had certain attributes of leadership, and they had the ability to influence a large number of followers and had superb results. I mean, the best example I can give you is of Jack Welch. Jack Welch, from when I was growing up, he was the leader of GE, and everybody wanted to be a Jack Welch. He was tough, he was brutal, but he was also very honest, and he was also very, if he liked you or if he found your advice good, he would listen to you. So he had that humility. Right. But then you also had other CEOs who were very ruthless. They most probably lasted a couple of years before they either got retired or they got changed and so on. So I think there is a right balance. It's different for different people. So as far as the newcomers are concerned, I think they have to understand that humanity is very critical. They need to, by the time they're in their mid 30s, be clear about what is their individual values which they cherish, because that value system will direct their behavior. So in my case, I had 6 values which I picked up at some point of time and I continued to enforce. It was integrity, innovation, collaboration, pace. So speed for me was very critical in my when I was a CEO, and that was because one of the companies I worked for was a company called Sun Microsystems. Sun Microsystems had the reputation of a typical Northern Californian company where they enjoyed life. In a sense, it was arrogant, which was partly the reason for their downfall, but also because they believed in what they were offering. But that's a good example of a company which was very aggressive, very arrogant to some people, but because of their arrogance, they actually lost their position in the marketplace.
So, sincerity in decision making is very critical. So, lovely talking to you, Bhaskar. Any tips, any insights that you'd like to share with upcoming leaders? Something that they can learn from you?
Yeah, I think that's just a message because, when we talk about leadership, you can write a whole book about leadership and there'll be about 20 different traits which you said that you must have to become a leader. So I've tried to distill what makes a true leader or what a leader does in just 3 phrases. Number one is that a great leader must have clarity. That means he knows where he's going, where his team is going, where his organization is going, and what they're going to go out. So he has to have the clarity of thinking. And the second thing is that every good leader must have energy, because energy is what inspires people. It's not passion. It's the energy you have. When you walk into the office, everybody knows that the leader has come in. When things are down, he's there to roll the flag, not that he's going to crack jokes or anything else. But he'll make sure the right people are in front of the people who are not going through a very good time. And I think the last one is that a great leader is the one who uplifts everybody who works for it and makes them successful. And that's really the pleasure of being a leader, is that you make others successful.
That was amazing, Bhaskar. Just loved your insights. And what we learned from you today was really, really very good. And we'd love to hear more from you. But yeah,
Thank
I'd
you.
like to end the session here. So, just wrapping up today, performance, as we heard today, is not about just staying ahead, it's about staying grounded. It's knowing about when to push, when to pause, and when to question the definitions that we inherited. Thank you, Bhaskar, for your honesty, courage, and depth beyond the obvious. And thank you for joining us for the WeAce Spotlight. Do continue to tune in to our upcoming spotlights, and thank you very much.